Hey everybody, this is your host Yoshino, and you are listening to episode 128 of Artists Decoded, and I get the opportunity to talk to professional skateboarder and photographer Jerry Sue. This is Jerry's first time on the podcast, but I actually met him when I was about 13 or 14 years old back in our hometown of San Jose, where I challenged him to a game of skate where I was brutally defeated, and it agonized me for the rest of my years and has transformed me into the person that I am today. So thank you very much, Jerry, for giving me that experience. But Jerry came onto the podcast to talk about his newest photography book entitled The Beautiful Flower is the World, which is a documentation of Jerry's humorous and sometimes poignant observations of modern-day American culture. I also love how this collection of images doesn't take itself too seriously, and Jerry has a way of capturing seemingly mundane moments, such as people's relationship to technology and their obsession with using their phones, to various strange signs that we pass on a daily basis living in a large city. But he captures it in a very interesting way, and the collection of images itself really tells us a lot about modern day urban culture and living in Los Angeles and the different things that we encounter every day. And yeah, I personally find his approach very relatable and understandable. And yeah, it's kind of like he's letting you in on the joke that he sees in the world. You can also find some of these images on his blog, nazigold.tumblr.com, which was the genesis of some of these images. And you can also find him on Instagram at Internet Famous. So before we begin the podcast, please go to our iTunes page and leave us a review. It helps for viewers just like yourself to find out about this podcast. So here it is, my conversation with professional photographer and professional skateboarder Jerry Sue for Artists Decoded. Yeah, dude, thanks so much for coming and being a part of Artists Decoded.
You're welcome. Yeah, it's my pleasure.
Yeah.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah. Okay, so I guess we can start off with the story of when I played you skate back in San Jose.
Sure.
Yeah. I mean, It's not really much of a story. It was at August Boger.
Uh-huh.
And I think you were, if I can remember this correctly, there was a ledge there by that six stair in the front.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm talking about?
I do, yeah.
And I think you were trying to backside 50-50 it or something like that.
Uh-huh.
And then this is when I was a kid, and I was and granted I was 12 or 13 years old. I think how old are you?
I'm 37 now, so I was probably 18.
Exactly.
At that time.
Yeah.
Around then.
Yeah, exactly. So then I just asked you to play skate, and I remember I think that week I learned how to do a switch frontside flip, so I kept on trying to do the switch frontside flip. I didn't land it, and you just destroyed me. That's pretty much the whole story. It's really not a story, but till this day, I just remember that just because, you see people on skate videos and stuff, and San Jose had a pretty robust skate community with, Tilt Mode Army, which you were a part of, and one of my favorite skateboarders was Marc Johnson. And I just, as a kid, you just have all these aspirations, you know what I mean? Not that I don't have aspirations now, but it just, I don't know, it's funny to think of, man.
No, I know. I understand that. It's just because, just a few years before that, I was, if I'd seen someone that I knew who was a pro skater or sponsored something, there was always this magical feeling, or kind of there they are in real life. I think at that age when you experience that, it's just so new. And it's funny, I have a story about August Boger too, and you bring up that ledge is really funny because during that time, I had just become sponsored and working with photographers and going on skate missions, getting tricks and stuff. That was my new reality. Anyway, so I was working with Gabe Morford, this skate photographer, and he was kind of a pioneer of fixing spots. So For anyone who doesn't skate, like if we're skating a spot and there's something wrong with it, like there's a crack or there's maybe a tree branch in the way or something like that, like we'll just get rid of it. We'll fix the crack with whatever. We'll cut the tree, whatever. Okay.
Yeah.
So that was like something that was new to me. And, and it was like actually kind of like, oh yeah, like of course, like we can make spots way more convenient for us. Anyway, so there on that ledge that you were just talking about, there was this really big tree branch in the way, and I don't know if it was there or not that day, but if I was trying to grind it, it was probably because like maybe even a week before that, at night, I broke into the school and I brought a handsaw and I sawed that branch, which was probably like a 15-foot, like really big branch. Like it was, I remember it being huge, and I sawed it off. It was like the middle of the night. And at the time, like, or probably still, but schools were surrounded by giant fences. So like, you were completely trespassing. And so I cut the tree off. I cut the tree branch off, but when it fell to the ground, I was so dumb that I didn't realize how big it was. Like it was so gigantic, and I had to get rid of it. And I was there for so long, just like sawing it into pieces and dragging it to this dumpster. Like I was like getting rid of like a body. It was really funny. Anyway.
Was it just you?
It was just me by myself. Yeah. I don't know. I don't really remember like my thought process. But anyways, I just want to skate that ledge.
Yeah,
anyways,
it seemed like a really good idea at the time.
So yeah, and then it's so funny because that was probably the day that I realized when I was trying to grind it that I don't even want to skate this thing. I like tried to skate and I was like, I kind of hate this thing. It doesn't feel good. I don't want to do anything on it, and then I just totally gave up on it. So that whole tree branch mission was completely pointless.
What was it, that same ledge that I'm talking about?
It is the same ledge, yeah, because there's 6 stairs, there's those white rails, and then there's that white ledge on the side, the planter ledge. Yeah, so I completely just, it's so funny when you brought up August Boger, because I had to think about what that school is. Yeah. I was like, August Boger, what is that? And I had to like literally go online and look up the school, and I realized like on Google Earth that is a school.
And it's
so anyway,
called August
so it brought
Boger.
back that really funny memory of me like, sweating at like 1 a.m. cutting this tree branch, like all nervous. And yeah.
That's hilarious. I can't even tell you how many times that I broke into that school just because, I don't know, you're just a kid. You don't understand what trespassing is. You kind of feel, I guess I felt kind of entitled to like, this is a skate spot and I'm just going to skateboard in it. And, I don't know. But I think, looking back on the whole idea of skateboarding just as a concept, it prepared me for other things in the world to kind of look at things as like a canvas. And maybe you can, share the same sentiment, with your photography, but you kind of like become more aware of certain things and the nuance of certain things, whether you're like super aware of it or not, but you kind of see anything. It's like, a canvas, and like, everything is your canvas essentially.
Yeah, sure. So, like the relationship with like for people often ask, how does skateboarding inform your photography and vice versa? And I always say that it's both, they're both, for me anyway, they're both an interpretation of environment. So like what you're talking about is, how skateboarding kind of teaches you to, view your environment and kind of in an abstract way, like a different way, basically not for what it was meant for, but for what you want to get out of it. So like that's how skateboarders see architecture. Our relationship with architecture is very special. My friends call it skate vision, and it's like, and that's kind of a whatever funny name for it, but that is what it is. It's like, for skateboarders, we walk down the street, we drive down the street, and we are kind of scanning and looking for things we want to skate, and they're very special. It's funny when someone asks me like, or someone will like someone who doesn't skate will like show me something, and they'll be like, I think this is a skate spot, and I'll look at it and be like, well, you're close, but like that's completely uninteresting. Yeah. So
it also depends on skill level too.
Sure. Yeah. But I sort of look at like, especially now since I'm older, I look at everything. I can see it all. I can see like the like the high risk stunt type skate obstacle, and I can see the like fun little everything. I mean, I think I've always been like that, but yeah, but definitely like different skaters see objects differently. I think that's part of like the artistic nature of skateboarding, is that there are, you know, there is no one thing to skate. And there are many, many different genres of skating and genres of skaters and styles and subcultures within the subculture. So like, I'm not some like all-knowing person who knows what's going to be skated or not. Like I often see things that other people are skating. I'm like, oh, I never even thought to do that. But, you know, but back to like just seeing things as a skater, yeah, it does train you to be a little more observant than maybe the average person.
And I mean, I think that's like what is beautiful about just learning in general and understanding the sort of subtleties and nuance of things. I mean, even you were talking about skateboarding, right? As a macro perspective, like this is skateboarding, right? And someone that's outside of that skateboarding world could see skateboarding and be like, you know, you could talk to like you, right? And then talk to someone that's like a vert skater and get the two confused because they have no idea the concept between vert skating and street skating and that sort of thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's a very good example, because like vert skaters, especially in like the pro skater world, like they're a completely different animal. Like they, in my opinion, they treat it kind of more as a sport. You know, they're more sports. They're more like athlete like in every part of their life, because they need to, like, first of all, they need to live near the vert ramp, you know, and they're kind of like maybe a soccer player needs to live near a soccer field, and what they skate is just so specific. So that's how they're different than us, because, you know, like for example, like I like going on tour and stuff, like we'll go all over and we'll film these videos and we go to different cities and skate and stuff. If there's a vert skater on our team, like they're not gonna come with us. They're just gonna stay, you know, wherever they are, because you know what I mean. And so the level of like the level of connection and camaraderie with the street skaters and the vert skaters, like of course, like it's more blended now. You know, but back when I was like a pro skater, like in the 90s and 2000s and stuff, like they were so separate. I remember one time I was flying to Australia and I was with all my teammates and we're just having a blast or whatever. And we get to baggage claim in Melbourne, and Bob Burnquist was on our flight, and he had bags, like a 6 foot tall pile of bags. He had his baby, his wife, and a nanny. And I was just looked at it like, and I just had like a backpack and my skateboard, and I was just like, damn, that looks insane. Like, you know what I mean? Like that is not something that I want to deal with when I'm traveling for skating. You know, I just want like my friends, my skateboard, and like my camera, and that's it. Like, and it was just so fun. And I'm not knocking that. I just saw that. That's just like burned in my mind as kind of like the difference between vert skaters and street skaters. Now it's a little different. Like now, you know, it's skaters are, you know, there isn't so much of a like, it's more blended. But I remember back then, I was like, they were so different. Yeah.
I mean, I think everything is, the way that I see things is everything is like a building block, right? Whether you're conscious of it or whether you're unconscious of it, but you're essentially creating neural pathways in your brain to intake certain things, right? I mean, even back then when I was looking at skateboarding, I'd really be interested in, like, for instance, that On Video. Do you remember On Video? And that On Video with Danny Way. And I mean, Danny Way and Bob Burnquist, I think, are like really good examples of people who can transition. I mean, yes, like they're both like more vert skaters than they are maybe street, but they still could do both and like pretty damn well. And so I think like, and this didn't really like inform my perspective necessarily as like a skateboarder, but more so about like understanding that you don't have to necessarily be bound to certain, like you can do multiple things and it's okay. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, like, yeah, I think what you're saying is like skateboarding can teach you to like break convention within itself. I feel like that's true and untrue in skating. I think like, you know, skateboarding kind of brags about being inclusive and like you can do anything, and blah 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 blah. But I mean, skateboarders are also extremely opinionated and like can also be very narrow-minded at the same time. So it's funny, like it's sort of both, kind of like everything. In every subculture, there's always this like sort of, especially subcultures that deal with being an outsider. You know, they're working so hard to kind of like have freedom of expression and to do what they want, but also what tends to happen is, you know, sometimes if you do something that's too different, people are really gonna like express that's whack, or like that's not what skateboarding is. That people start to, you know, they start to become what they're rebelling against a lot. And I found that a lot. I found that a lot in skating. It's like, you know, it is this thing that teaches you like about, you know, fighting a system that you don't want to be a part of, but it's also a system in itself, and it kind of like it can, you know, because I remember finding out that people didn't like certain tricks or didn't like the way I skated, or didn't, you know what I mean, like things like that was like oh, you know, this is, you know, skating is kind of like everything else in a way, you know, and but that's sort of the small part. Like the big part of skating is definitely about doing whatever you want, because there are no, you know, it sounds silly, but there are no rules. You know, there really is no person telling you what it is or isn't, and that's what's made it so powerful. But at the same time, like it's not just that. Yeah, no, of course. Yeah, I mean, I think you know, things get kind of skewed, especially as you get older, and then you kind of have to choose, you know, it's like, because there is like commodification that goes on with skateboarding, you know, and people, you know, sponsors, you know, you get sponsored or something, and then, you know, you're sponsoring this product essentially, right? And then there's business involved. I understand that for sure. And I mean, you see that in the same with, you know, the creative world, you know, in the creative field. You know, it's something that I go back and forth on a lot. It's the balance between art and commerce, because you need to make money doing the thing that you do, but then it's like, how do you go about making that money, right? Sure, yeah. There's a lot of decisions that you need to make, and there's a lot of like, there's a lot of choices you need to make about yourself when you're dealing with that kind of stuff, because like art and commerce definitely are fighting each other all the time. They it sucks because they need each other, but they also sort of inhibit each other. And yeah, definitely with like with skating, like, I mean, choosing to do it for a living, like you're making a big choice. You're making a big choice about something that you love. You know, like anyone who gets paid for doing what they love understands that there's something that you kind of give up a little bit. And it also depends who you are, you know, like maybe you love skating and you don't care about doing anything for money. You know, there's a lot of skaters who, you know, they love skating and they also love to take any deal that they feel like taking in it, and they don't think about like the things that I think about when it comes to those type of things, because I'm always like very worried about, you know, what I'm supporting, and like you know, if it's like if it's, you know, if it's like an energy drink company or something, I'm just like, well, that's not really my thing. But then someone else will just be like, well, why not? That's great, you know, like and yeah, in the art world too, like the artists, musicians, everybody has to make those choices. Like, you know, do I want my song to be in this Kia commercial? If I don't take this, then I'm, you know, maybe like my family will suffer if I don't. You know what I mean? Like there's for sure, you know, there, at different points in your life, you have to make. You're kind of a different person, because like when you're younger, you can make. Like when I was young, I could make all the choices that I wanted, you know, and then like, but as an older person, if I have like more responsibilities, it's just like, well, shit, like I gotta just kind of roll up my sleeves and just fucking do this. Yeah. and it sucks, but you know, but yeah, it's, unless you're just some like powerhouse artist, skater, whatever, like you're going to have to make these choices, and it sucks. And I don't know, it looks bad sometimes. It looks really bad, but yeah, I mean, I guess that's the issue too. If you don't come from money, then you have to decide
what to choose, you know? And also, you know, something that I think about a lot is just projections and projected reality, whether it be like in a spiritual sense or an ideological sense or whatever. But, and also like you're saying at different points of your life, you know, maybe right now I would see Eyes Wide Shut, you know, the Stanley Kubrick film, or any Stanley Kubrick film now, and I'd see it in a certain light. But when I was like 12 years old when I saw it, it was a totally different thing.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I mean, like, I often go back to things that I like thought were something when I was younger. And
what do you mean?
Like, for example, like a movie, you know, you go back and you see it and you're just like, oh, this is not as amazing or funny or good or whatever as I remembered. So yeah, I mean, like at different points in your life, you're really different. And, you know, when I was 18, like I could make a lot of choices about like sponsors and money and all kinds of things that I couldn't do anymore. But yeah, even, you know, well, anyway.
No, yeah. No, I totally get it. Yeah.
But with art too, art and film and books, like I've, you know, you go back and like, you're just kind of a different person now, but not totally different, but you're just looking at it through a new prism, you know, it's just different. And sometimes it's good and sometimes it's bad.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I like to think of things as well about, you know, thinking of things as taking responsibility for the choice, you know, like, oh, someone gets angry at me. Like I have to figure out, okay, so and maybe this could just happen in a split second. It's like, do I respond to that in a negative way, or do I just kind of try to empathize and see where that comes from? You know what I mean?
Well, I guess it depends who's mad at you.
And it depends who's mad at you too. Yeah, if it's someone on the street, then that could be a whole nother scenario.
Yeah, I mean, if it's someone that you really care about, yeah, there's going to be a lot of things that you need to like consider. Yeah, but if it's just like some online comment or just someone you don't know or just some asshole, then you're going to have to react completely differently.
Yeah. Do you get a lot of, I mean, going into The Beautiful Flowers of the World, your book that you just released, and also Nazi Gold, I guess, do you get a lot of negative comments for some of the images that are in the book?
I mean, just sometimes. It just depends. I mean, like, I think like when I did the blog, which is kind of like how I first started presenting this work. Yeah, there would be stuff. There would be negative comments. Sure. I mean, it's the internet. So yes, of course, like people would, you know, say stuff and skateboarders especially, you know, they were sometimes they really don't like when you try to do something else other than skate. You know, a common comment would be like, stick to skating. You know, you like, they really don't appreciate that you're even trying to do something else.
Yeah.
They're like, you know, they're extra, you know, I don't know what it is really, because I don't know. I mean, I feel like it's really, people just want to express themselves, and they kind of want attention. I've noticed, because I kind of have a general rule, like to not respond to people, you know, even if it's positive, maybe, you know, sometimes, but I just try to make it so I don't, it's kind of an understanding that I won't respond, because like once you do, you kind of open a gate, and once people understand you'll do that, then, you know, a lot of negativity starts to surface, you know, because I've responded to negative comments, and when I respond, their response after that sometimes is apologetic and actually very, it completely flips, because, you know, I don't know what it is, but I think they just are like, they want you to talk to them. Basically, they want you to say something. And so that's just kind of like, I just try to avoid that, because it's just a really slippery slope. But yeah, I mean, but yeah, people criticize this stuff all the time, because especially this body of work. Because
why do you think that is?
Because this body of work is, if you look at it kind of, just at first glance, it doesn't seem to have much artistic value. You know, it just seems like like it's extremely snapshotty. You know what I mean? But that's the point of it. It's using a technology that is not meant to be artful. It's using a technology that's it sort of trades quality for accessibility. You know what I mean? Like it's not about making beautiful photos.
Yeah.
It's about just sharing an image quickly, efficiently, and just instant gratification type shit.
Well, that's also what I like about your work as a photographer is, I mean, especially from the stuff from Nazi Gold, which is this book as well, right? It's a curation of those images in this book.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, I think my personal favorite type of artwork is when there's humor involved, but there's also a sort of like seriousness as well. It's kind of everything, you know. I mean, I think your title, "The Beautiful Flowers of the World," kind of encapsulates that in a way.
Yeah,
because it's everything. It's everything. It's all things, you know.
Sure. It's the title is also kind of a metaphor for the humor and of the photos because it's sort of when you first read it, I think usually your first thought is there's something wrong with it. You know, like it's sort of grammatically wrong. And that's on purpose because, the photos sort of have that too, where you look at a lot of them and there's sort of like, maybe you don't really see right away what it is, but there's like a punctum in it where you like are drawn to that part and then it reveals itself and it's like, oh, it's kind of just like a one-liner joke or whatever. That title is actually, that title is from a t-shirt, a photo of a t-shirt in the book. And, it's like it was in Chinatown here in LA, and it was one of those shirts where someone in Asia mistranslated English, and those are always really funny. Those are great.
Those are amazing.
Yeah. So so that's what that title is from, and there's actually more to it. Says the beautiful flower is the world, and then just like all this gibberish and all this like craziness, and that's where that comes from, and. The reason I
saw that photo.
Oh, okay.
yeah, I saw that photo earlier, and I was like, "Oh man, yeah." Because the gibberish part at the end, I was like, "Is that even a word?"
No, it's just like someone just smashing their fingers on a keyboard, which is so amazing. And
someone was wearing that T-shirt.
No, it was on a rack. But I'm sure someone eventually wore it.
Someone bought it.
Yeah, someone did. But that sort of speaks to the work because that phrase is English. It went to China, presumably, and then it came back like all fucked up. And that's sort of another message in the book is that these photos were created on a phone and sent to another phone, and then they lived on a blog, and now they live in this book. So they've sort of like gone through this journey where they've also degraded, because they're digital photos, and every time you copy a digital photo, they degrade.
Yeah.
So that phrase is like completely degraded from one language to another. And the images have also, degraded, but they also have ended up in a physical form with their final form. I feel,
yeah.
So, they've kind of gone on their own little trip.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, no, I mean the degradation of technology in itself is an interesting concept, I think. But also, speaking of Asia specifically, specifically Vietnam. When I went to Vietnam, the advertisements that are on like regular storefronts are essentially just images that people like, a 400 by 400 pixel image, but they blow it up to like 6 feet by 6 feet.
Yeah.
So the pixels are like this big.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They're like huge pixels. And I always find those things to be really interesting. Well, not always, but I guess like when I was there, I was like, oh, that's interesting. It's like no respect at all for copyrights or any of that, and I kind of thought it's just funny, man. It's just a funny decision,
Sure, yeah. I think,
yeah.
I mean, we kind of take that stuff for granted, because, we live here. But I mean, like someone in Vietnam who's just trying to like, run their like scooter shop. Yeah, they don't give a shit. They probably can't. I mean, they can't afford to. They probably can't afford to. The level of quality that we're used to. I totally get what you're saying, though. I love that stuff. Like when people just kind of like they don't really care about quality or, quote unquote quality. And also, it's like the shirt. It's just like they just threw a rose on a shirt and then like barfed out this phrase that doesn't even make sense. They didn't even check with anybody. Like, I mean, the fact that kind of stuff exists is amazing to me. And that's kind of like a lot of the stuff in the book is that it's sort of, irony and humor is a big theme in the book. Like basically, like store sign. There's a lot of word humor in it, and the reason that there's humor in it is because like there's definitely some kind of unintentional total mistake, and that stuff is everywhere. And
I like the interesting wordplay too. Actually, there's this photo that I took the other day. I'm just going to show you really quick. I think it was yesterday. So this
is that real?
Yeah.
Wow. That's insane.
Yeah. So for people listening on the podcast, I found this image, and I think it was in Mid-City, and it's basically mass shooting insurance.
Yeah.
It's an advertisement.
And the photo is for some reason like not a classroom, but it's like bleacher seats, like at Dodger Stadium. That's so weird. Yeah, it's like, what does that even have to do with? It's funny because like how I asked if it was real is something I have to ask before I like for the beautiful the book series, the photos that are in there. Like a lot of the photos, when I look at them again, sometimes I have to ask if it's real or not, because if something is trying to be funny, if it's like an ad for a movie that's trying to look like a real thing, but it's fake, then that's not going in. That doesn't qualify, because like I remember one time there was an ad at a bus stop and it said, "Are you still a virgin? Dial this number." And I forget what movie that it was, some like teen comedy movie. And I was like, wow, that's amazing. Thinking that it was like maybe some like Christian or Mormon thing. But then I looked it up and it was like an ad campaign for this, this teen movie. And I was like, oh, that doesn't belong with my stuff, because it's trying to be funny on purpose, that's why I was wondering if that mass shooting, because that looks like a joke. That looks like an onion thing. You know what I mean?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. No, I like that. I like that you use that as a
like a prerequisite.
But so let's go. I don't know. Let's scale back a little bit and like tell me how you got into photography in general.
Well, I'd always been interested in art ever since I was a little kid. Like I loved comic book art. I loved comic books. I was obsessed with comic books, and I drew all the time. I always loved drawing, even before that. And so I discovered comic books, and the art was just like so incredible to me. And I copied it all the time. I would just like make up my own superheroes or whatever. And it's funny. I actually went to an elementary school that was like predominantly Mormon. Like all the teachers were Mormon.
In San Jose?
In San Jose, yeah.
What's it called?
It's called the Country School of Almaden. And I kind of grew up in this like little pocket of South San Jose called Almaden Valley. And there's a lot of Mormon churches, a lot of Mormon people. So whatever, went to this school. Anyways, I was like drawing comic book stuff in class, and I was kind of drawing something with like a character I made up, which was like a guy with a butcher's knife, and there was like blood and stuff, and actually a really good drawing, I think. And I have this image of it in my mind. I wish I still had it, but whatever. Anyway, the teacher saw it, and she became immediately like concerned. She was like a very like, what you would imagine kind of like a middle-aged religious woman to be like, you know what I mean? Yeah. Anyway, she called a parent-teacher conference with my parents, and they had to like come in and talk about whether I had some kind of problem or whatever. And I remember my parents my dad especially, we were walking away, and I could tell by the look on his face that he was really annoyed by the teacher, like bringing everybody in for this, it's just a fun little drawing. Anyway, this little window into my, where I grew up. But,
and trying to inhibit your creativity.
Totally. Yeah. A classic, like, religious fashion, trying to like stomp on my creativity. Oh, yeah. But anyways, so I was really into comic books, and then I really started getting into like pop art because like my parents, like we would go to like Barnes and Noble or whatever, and like most of the books in there were kind of the most popular, like, you know, Warhol, Jasper Johns, like Rauschenberg, like those kind of things. So I started getting into that kind of stuff and being like, oh, this is really cool. And then that was just sort of like a gateway into different kinds of art and then photography. And then when I discovered photography, I was like, oh, I really like this. At the same time, I had just started skating, and like documentation and self-documentation in skateboarding is like very important. Like we grow up looking at magazines and videos, and we just kind of want to make our own. We want to make our own little skate zines. We want to make our own home movies. And so I started to borrow my mom's, like, the family video camera, her like family camera or whatever, her still camera, and I would just shoot everything. My friends, and we would film ourselves skating. And that's kind of where it started, you know, like the love of, the love of just documenting our lives. And then when I got sponsored, I remember I started to be around like real professional skate photographers, and they would kind of like give me little tips and let me borrow cameras and teach me how to use cameras and teach me how cameras worked. And that's basically how I learned how to shoot a photo. And I mean, I still don't really know how to shoot a photo, but that's how I started to learn how to shoot photos. And and those people really exposed me to, like, you know, sort of how to use this tool. And then at the same time, I was just buying books and trying to absorb as much as possible. But that's how it started.
That's awesome. Yeah. I mean, I personally think that the vision is much more important than the technical details.
Sure. Yeah. I think always. I think like I you know, like a lot of photographers sometimes, like, that I meet or talk to or whatever, like, they're just so obsessed with gear and the tools and stuff, and their photography isn't necessarily interesting in any way, you know, like, and you know, it's like that with everything, you know, if you're into cars, if you're whatever, like there's an artistry in almost everything. And then there are also the people who, you know, they just care about, the tools or the technology or whatever. Like that's what they're obsessed with. But, yeah, like I don't really care that much about it. Like it's definitely like the idea, the subject matter, like that's what's important to me. Like I often don't know what people are talking about when they're talking about cameras.
Oh yeah.
Or whatever, you know, like I don't know anything about cameras.
Yeah. I mean, I think
I also don't want to sound like people who really care about the gear don't make good photos, because that's not true. But
no,
but there are the people that you meet or the people that you see that they're just like so obsessed with, you know, like gadgets, and I just don't understand that. It's just, you know,
at the end of the day, I think it's about perspective. You know, if you have like an interesting perspective, then it'll come through, whether you take a photo on your phone, or whether you take it on like a really nice camera or something. But I think a lot of the times, like, people don't question like why a lot.
Well, I think you're talking about like the hierarchy of imagery, which is a thing, like especially in photography, you know, like the stuff in my book is the lowest rung in terms of, like, you know, because like in the hierarchy of photography, like, you know, it's about resolution, right? So like highest resolution, largest negative size, those definitely are at the top. And then I've made photos with a smartphone. It's literally, you can't really get any lower. So I think that's what you're talking about. And that's sort of something that, like, I just wanted to kind of push with the book. It was just like, I had to ask myself, what is this? Is this even artwork? Like, I don't even know really. But I think during, like, working on the book and the process of making it, I did realize that, yeah, you know, it does say something about our culture and like the, you know, the quality of the poor image, you know. It is something. It's they are photos. I had to ask myself that, like, are these even photos? Like, what is this shit, you know?
Yeah. Have you seen that documentary, Generation Wealth? by the photographer Lauren Greenfield?
No, but I've heard of it.
I think you might.
I know
like
her
it.
work, but I've never seen that documentary.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Do you like her work?
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel. I mean, just it's kind of like a perspective of how we look at commodity and capitalism, and it's a bunch of interviews from different people that are porn stars to like multimillionaire financial like Wall Street people, and how these people view money and what they do for money. And I don't know, I thought it was interesting. I mean, you might like it.
Yeah, I mean, I'll check it out eventually. Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah, what kind of films do you like? Like, have you seen any recent ones that you really enjoyed?
I always like slip up on this question because I always fucking blank when someone asks me about stuff I've seen lately.
Or just like
I'm doing it
film of recent memory that like made an impact?
Let's see. There's a lot. I guess one that just kind of pops into my mind because I enjoy the subject matter is that movie. Now I forgot the title. This is insane. The movie about that. It's about AI. That the guy who invents that girl AI. What's it called? Oh, Dewey Ex Machina.
Ex Machina.
Ex Machina.
Yeah.
Ex Machina. Yeah. I like that movie because I love thinking about AI. So like that was a just like a cool experience to see that.
What do you think about AI?
It's funny. I think all kinds of things about it. It's funny. When I hear people talk about it, they generally have, they're either one thing or another. They're either like really afraid of it, or they think it's like benign and going to be really helpful. And people really disagree about that. And I think that's interesting. And I also think, I don't know, it's just fascinating to think about when it's fascinating to think about the ethics of it and also when it could possibly happen, like a general AI, because like people are always like, oh my God, because people are like, what are they afraid of, right? They're afraid of like the Terminator scenario, and like that is, in my opinion, I'm not like a scientist or anything, but that just seems so far away. But at the same time, once an AI becomes like aware and stuff, like things are going to move really fucking fast. And so, maybe that'll happen. But I don't know. I like to think about the ethics of it because like, one thing humans are really bad at is agreeing on what's right or wrong. So that's something that people really have to decide before they fucking switch the AI on. Before they turn the on button, they're going to have to like make a lot of decisions that people in general can't agree on, and that's a scary thing because like, for example, like here in the United States, like I think in general, like injecting like DNA into a baby to try and like make it something other than what it's going to be, that's like very wrong. I think most people would agree on that, especially the people that decide. But in China, they'll just like straight up do it. They'll just be like, well, let's give it a shot. Let's see what happens. Like the levels of like, the lines that they will cross, they'll cross them way quicker. And that just sort of speaks to the culture. But like, for example, like if you teach a robot, or like an AI, for example, like just picture a robot because that's like the easiest thing to picture when it comes to like a dangerous AI. Like if you teach it like not to hurt someone, like a human being, no matter what, you're really going to have to define hurt. And also like kill, you cannot kill. Like you have to give it a definition of life, which is something that people can't agree on. Like we don't even know what that is. For example, like, like when is a fetus alive and a life and has, or whatever, a soul, if that's what you believe in.
Yeah.
So we can't even agree on that. So how can you tell a machine what to do in that situation? So like if like a pregnant woman is coming at another human being with like a knife, what does the robot do if the robot knows that the woman is like 1 week pregnant or 2 weeks or whatever, like what's the decision it's going to make?
Yeah, exactly.
So you have to teach
like
it.
scans its body.
Like just for example,
body.
like, that scenario, like if it knows the woman is pregnant or whatever, or has conceived, you're going to have to like, I don't know, you're going to have to know what to tell it in that scenario. And, that's just a fun thing to think about. Like, how do you, and that's just an example of like, how difficult it would be to make a responsible artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
I don't know how close human beings are to that, because we can't do so much stuff on our own. And to like turn on a machine with emotions and can make those kind of decisions, like that's pretty insane.
Yeah, it's interesting. I never really thought about like the ethical part of it in terms of what you were talking about, in terms of like sentient, ethical decision making, and especially like, yeah, makes sense. I kind of lean more towards the Terminator Judgment Day scenario.
Yeah, I mean it's easier to kind of lean towards like that it's dangerous. Another thing is that, I mean, if you create something that is aware of itself, it's gonna know how to trick you into not turning it off too. Like, because it's gonna be able to think 10,000 times faster than you, and then it's gonna learn how to think 10,000 times faster than that. So it's kind of scary.
Yeah. Have you ever seen? I mean, speaking of directors that their entry point was in skateboarding, have you seen Her from Spike Jonze?
I've never seen Her. It's one of those things that everyone's like, you haven't seen that? But I've never seen Her. No. But from what I can understand, it really addresses like that this thing. And also like the relationship between humans and machines, like that's interesting too, and how cybernetic will become, because, people will predict by 2029, like we will join, like we already are kind of joined with machines, but some people would even argue that like glasses, like eyeglasses are, cybernetic, that they're something that they're a technology that we put on ourselves to enhance how we live. So someone even argue that, but the phones, that's a whole can of worms. And then, like Ray Kurzweil, the futurist, he thinks like by 2029 we will join with machines. We will like join. We'll have like computers in our brains and stuff like that, which is like questionable. But who really knows how soon it's going to be?
I always find it interesting watching certain films, like maybe films in like the 80s and 90s. That sort of whole movies are generally trying to like predict the future, especially if it's like a post-apocalyptic sort of future world. And then, like a film in the 80s will be like, oh, this is in 2000, Sure. Yeah. That stuff is cool. Like it's their own version of futurism. Like 1950s futurism is going to be like the Lost in Space type aesthetic. And then like, in like the 1990s, it's all like hacker shit. And you know what I mean? And then, like Matrixy type stuff. And, and then like, there's the whole like Mad Max, like desert apocalypse type future. It's funny, actually, I was just reading this thing the other day about the aesthetics of like futurism and science fiction. It comes from Lost in Space, actually, like all that stuff that of course it comes from like earlier stuff like Metropolis, but Lost in Space kind of really shaped how like we view, like when we think of the word science fiction, I feel like we think of like a robot on Mars, like doing something or whatever, farming or whatever, and that kind of like aesthetic and imagery like really comes from that, which I think is interesting. We're kind of like stuck thinking about it like that a little bit, I think. That's like because we always, how like if people are trying to create something, they always, especially for like a mass audience, they need to make it consumable and familiar, but new at the same time. And the whole like familiar part, I think people get lazy and they just go to the past and they kind of like, they're sort of just recycling an aesthetic. They're not really trying to create anything new.
I think that's called hauntology. Hauntology is like
interesting.
Yeah, hauntology is like not really being able to create anything new, only digging from the past. You know, like how like
you mean like a lot of movies now,
or like artwork. You know, like or even like you know, just like a lot of aesthetics. They just kind of like the whole like 80s aesthetic, the Tron, the grid, like that kind of stuff, like weird like vaporwave or whatever that's going on. So, like that is all just borrowing from
past
like
ideas.
80s futurism, but it's familiar, so people really like it. And that's sort of like a it's I don't know, it's a crutch, I think, for creatives. They just kind of like, but you know, it's so hard to avoid because it like, you know, I see it and I'm like, oh yeah, I like that. And it's because of, you know, it says something to me and to where I come from.
Yeah. You know, before, when I was younger, I had some really, I mean, it might be coming from like the skateboard culture and also from like me when I was playing music and stuff like that. Just sort of like trying to be like the antithesis of certain things. But then, I don't know, as I get older, I'm like, oh, okay, well, I can enjoy certain things for like, it's almost like comedic value.
Yeah. I think like as a young person, like you were probably just more idealistic about certain things you were trying to consume. I mean that comes from me anyways. Like I understand that, and I think it's just because I'm like, my personality is like a certain temperament or whatever, like very curious and wanting to explore stuff. But also I've been thinking about this a lot lately, is that I'm the child of immigrants, and being the child of immigrants, which I'm sure you probably are too, it puts you in like kind of a strange framework. Like your place in society is a little bit, it's less defined. And also there's this like level of rebellion that was inside me all the time, because growing up, I mean, my parents are from Taiwan and they immigrated to the United States, had me. They actually met in the United States, but they were both from Taiwan and came to the United States to go to college, and then they met, got married, had me. And so I'm an American kid. And so like, but I'm also a Taiwanese kid. And growing up, I was constantly confused about that. And like, am I Taiwanese? Am I American? And if I'm both, how do I deal with that? And it definitely was confusing. And I think it kind of just, and I think as a kid, I decided that I was American. You know, I wanted to be American because fitting in is so important when you're growing up. So like, I was like, I just want to be American. So it led to this like extremely rebellious behavior. Like it went to like almost an extreme for me and my family. And I think that's what you're kind of talking about, like, you know, trying to find maybe not what's contrary, but you're just trying to, you're looking for extremes. And that's kind of like what I was doing when I was a kid, was like, because I think a lot of, you know, immigrant kids and Asian kids can relate to this, is like going to school and not really fitting in and feeling like you're a part of everyone else is a little bit hurtful. And like, especially if you're like going to school with like Chinese stuff, you know, like if you're bringing a lunch with Chinese food and it smells weird and like the other kids make fun of you, and like you're just right then and there, you're like, I'm never bringing this shit to school again. And then you have to like tell your mom, you're like, Mom, don't ever make that food for me again. You know what I mean? It's like, that is like, looking back on it must have been so hurtful to my parents. But yeah, like, I remember consciously just being like, I'm American. I'm going to do everything I can to be American.
Yeah.
And,
because you're trying to seek your own identity.
Right. And it's like kind of hard, because what is your identity? You know, like, I mean, kids who grew up in a completely homogenized, scenario, even they struggle to find their identity. And me going home to like my immigrant family, which wasn't even that crazy. It wasn't like they were from, you know, like a place that completely didn't understand where they were, but still, like coming home, everything was amplified as a child. You know, you come home and you're just hyper critical of everything. You know, you're at school or your friend's house, and then you come home and you're like, ugh, like what is this? And looking back on that feels shitty, but it's also like just the path that I needed to be on. That's like, because it led me to like skateboarding and art and where I am now. So it was a good thing, but it was also like thinking back on, you know, growing up like that. It was kind of tough. It was kind of tough, but I mean, my parents were supportive, but to a point, you know.
What did they think about you wanting to become a professional skateboarder? Was it, let's see, your first sponsor, was it Maple?
Yeah, well, my very first sponsor was a skate shop, but then like Maple right
NC.
after that.
Was
yeah,
that NC skate shop?
Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah, what did they think about that?
Well, of course they didn't like it. They didn't like it at all. They wanted, because at that time I was probably 15, you know, first getting sponsored, and then 16 board sponsor, and then like going pro right after that. And like, yeah, they were extremely worried about me because they had no frame of reference for what was going on with me. They had no idea how to deal with the choices that I was making. And I turned pro, like right before I turned 17, I turned pro, completely autonomous, money. I was just like in control, and they couldn't stop me. And like I wasn't going to college. They were, I mean, I think they were pretty bummed out. They were devastated, and they were then just confused. And I was just so checked out because I was in my world, you know, I was like trying to like fulfill the dream basically. And I was just like, my parents and what they wanted was so low on my list of priorities. It's funny. They always supported me. They bought me skateboards. They drove me to skate parks. They like let me, you know, go do things. But there was always this, you know, I never had a lot of the freedoms that my friends had, who had like, you know, whatever. They didn't have immigrant parents.
Yeah.
Not that that's like a bad thing.
No, I get it. It just
like,
frames your reality a certain way.
But like, yeah, but I mean, wanting to skateboard all day long was so weird for them. They had a hard time with it. But they eventually, you know, like, I bought a house when I was 25, and it's so funny. That's when they stopped encouraging me to stop. That's when they stopped asking about college.
In San Jose?
Yeah, in San Jose.
Oh, wow.
And that's when they stopped, you know, they finally were like, all right, well, this is what this guy wants to do. So, at 25. So,
yeah.
So
well,
funny.
it makes sense. I mean, again, you know, I'm just going off of what you're saying and understanding what it potentially could be like being an immigrant parent. You know, you come to this country for a certain thing, whether that be to have a better life, to have certain opportunities that you didn't have in your country of origin, that sort of thing. So yeah, I would understand why immigrant parents would expect, you know, certain things like going to college and then having validation that you would, you know, oh, well, he bought a house, so this must be serious. This must be a career or something like that. I could see that. Of course.
Like, yeah. I mean, like, I can only imagine moving to another country and trying to raise a child and trying to like, you know, all the baggage that comes along with that, and basically raising like a child from another country. I cannot imagine that. And then, I mean, but they did it. They did a really good job, but it was hard.
Yeah.
I mean, it was crazy. It was crazy trying to, you know, and I love them so much, but I mean, I can't, what they did so that I could have the life that I had. I could never be thankful enough. It's insane. Yeah. Like they're both computer engineers, and like, they worked all fucking day, every fucking day, so that we could so I could go skate. You know, it's so funny to think about like what a shitty kid I was. But you know,
it makes sense about the rebellion stuff though. I mean, I remember those old tilt mode videos. It seemed like, and you know, you only get a kind of a glimpse into the world but it seemed like those were some reckless times.
I mean, that whole thing was a rebellion in itself because I feel like, you know, because at the time skateboarding, the most popular type of skateboarding was like zero videos, like handrails and gaps and just like destroying yourself. And Tilt Mode was kind of a reaction to that. Like we wanted to make stuff that was fun and like silly and sort of like how we were and how a lot of people were. But it was I think like the reason that sort of the aesthetic of Tilt Mode is definitely sort of a reaction to, you know, the seriousness of skateboarding at the time, for better or worse. I don't know.
No, I remember I love those videos. Yeah. I mean, especially because it's like I knew the spots that you guys were skating and I could relate in that way. And it was San Jose. So, you know, there's that sort of San Jose pride. But I actually remember being a little kid and I don't know, 14 years old, 13, and watching that first Tilt Mode video. And I remember Louie Barletta doing all these tricks. And I didn't get it at that time. I didn't understand the humor in it. You know, I'm like, well, he didn't land that perfectly. Like, why the fuck would they put in the video?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But now it's like, as an adult, I'm like, oh, I get it. Yeah. And it makes sense, you know, how you're describing it.
Yeah. I mean, imperfection is sort of, in all creative fields, something that can result in something that's much better. My wife, she was a dancer, and when we first started dating, she would always try to tell me like, oh, you know, like skateboarding's a lot like dance, and it's a lot like dancing, and I kind of like was like, really? Nah, because you're always so as a skater, you're always so protective. Like, there's nothing like skating. Like, you know what I mean? But,
it's just your ego.
Yeah, you're totally. But but it's funny.
What kind of dance?
Like ballet.
Oh, okay.
It's funny. She would always tell me that. And then the movie Black Swan came out, and I was like, I watched it, and I was like, ooh, yeah, like this makes a lot of sense. That movie is like kind of that's kind of the perfect skateboard movie a little bit because the Natalie Portman character is like her end goal is absolute perfection. And then the Mila Kunis character, she's got style. She's just got it. You know what I mean? And then the guy in charge, the Vincent Cassel character, he favors Mila Kunis because she's got style. And like Natalie Portman does not understand why her perfection is not being rewarded. And like that's kind of a really rad metaphor for many, many things, but like skating too, like striving for perfection, I don't know, that's just a fucking headache, and it's never going to be there. That is a goal you're never going to reach. And I think Louie definitely, like, he, like, really embodies that. Like, the way he skates is, like, really taught me a lot about skateboarding. Because before I met him, I was kind of under the impression that skateboarding had to be perfect. You know, I was like, maybe 16 or 17 when I met him. And I was so obsessed with doing things perfectly. But when I met him and started skating with him and learning from him, I was like, oh, like, no, like there's something else that I need to, or like I don't need to think about being perfect anymore. Like that's gone. That's dead.
Yeah.
So yeah, he's super influential to me.
Did he tell you? Did he like verbally tell that to you, or is this something that you just observed?
Oh no. Like I just observed it. I just was like, ooh, like I want to be more like this. I don't want to be him, but I want to feel a little bit of what this guy's feeling, you know? So that's kind of what it was like. You know, our skating really went well together.
Yeah. Yeah. And you were kind of like the youngest in the pack. Were you, or were they like Marc Johnson and,
yeah, when I met Marc Johnson, he was 19 and I was 15. So he's like 4 years older than me.
That's still, I mean, that's a considerable age gap when you're that young.
Yeah, at that age, he was like a full blown adult. You know, he wasn't even old enough to drink yet, but but I thought he was just like, and he is kind of just him in particular. I mean, he's just sort of like a wise person. You immediately feel like he is a little bit older. But yeah, I mean, at that time, most of my friends were in that like around 4 or 5 years older than me.
Yeah. Yeah, I was looking at, so when I was looking through your images, not just now, but, you know, Nazi gold and stuff, it's very, I mean, and I don't really like to like compare necessarily, but I see some similarities between like you and Ed Templeton, you know, just kind of like the humor aspect. Do you feel the same way, or what do you think?
I guess sometimes, yeah. I mean, me and Ed are friends, and we like the same stuff. You know, we have like, I think like, yeah, we have our more like sensitive work, and then our more like kind of humorous work. I guess I don't know. Wait, like what? Sorry, I'm just tripping up here, but I mean, what I will say is I'm heavily influenced by Ed Templeton. Ed was one of the like people in skating that and I still do to this day, like look up to as an artist. Like he was really doing some crazy shit when I was young. That was like, oh, like he was really setting the bar for skaters, which at that time was, I feel like, a pretty like judgmental group, you know, because I remember in Big Brother there was this thing called the Ed Haters Club, you know, like people just write hateful things about Ed, and like you know, because you know he would shoot like nudes of himself, and like, you know, things that I thought were really awesome, but people were really like homophobic about it. People are still homophobic to this day towards him, but I always thought that was just the best. You know, he really kind of showed me that you can do whatever the fuck you want. It doesn't matter if you skate. You know, you can explore other things as much as you want. Yeah. So, you know, like I would see why there are parallels, because like I really look up to him and am like heavily influenced by him. I mean, he's a great artist. So
he is.
Yeah, and he's
an incredible artist.
He's a really good artist. He has good taste. He like is into good stuff. You know. And
he seems so humble too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, no. And he's an incredible skateboarder. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, no, yeah.
Yeah, I think he was I mean, yeah, I guess like, and this kind of goes, you know, back, I think as a kid, or maybe just like at certain points at life or all throughout life, you're trying to find, this isn't for everyone, but I know that I have tried to find people that resemble me in certain ways, like ideologically or philosophically or whatever, you know what I mean? And I mean, I think that's just, you know, a way to relate with the world and relate with the surroundings and understand, you know. So I guess what I'm trying to say is like, that would make sense why Ed Templeton like is someone that you would respect. I mean, he is a great artist. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, just, I just felt like we share a lot of sensibilities and points of view and stuff, and you know, but I guess you should be careful about doing stuff like that, like surrounding yourself with too many like-minded people. That can be dangerous.
Why do you say that?
Just because you're gonna live in this weird confirmation bias world that you build for yourself, and then you're never gonna be able to like objectively look at things, because you're just surrounded by people who think the same thing as you. If you're not around people that challenge you, then you know you're gonna live in this you're gonna get a real wake up call one day, and it's gonna really suck. Yeah. So that's just why I say that. You know, it's good to surround yourself with people that are gonna like call you out and just make you think about your opinions, and that's a really good thing. I mean, both. You need both. You need people that will like, you know, support you and like are like-minded, and then you also need people to kind of like tell you you're being whack, basically. Yeah.
You know. No, it's true. I mean, I think there's varying degrees of validation and that you would need in your life. and certain like confirmations and check marks. But yeah, I mean, I think like, it'd be unwise of someone to think that they're right about everything.
Yeah, no, that's definitely. I mean, like my wife is one of those people that she will like brutally tell me the truth, which is something I need. Like sometimes I'm surrounded by people that will just tell me what I want to hear, but she won't do that, which is one of her best qualities. But but some fucking hurts sometimes. You're just like shit, but she's usually right. Yeah, she can look at things really. She's got great taste, super smart. So she'll just be like, "Yo, that sucks," kind of, or like, and she'll have a good reason why.
Yeah.
So it's nice to have someone like that, so close to me that I trust, even though it hurts sometimes. Everyone knows how that feels.
Yeah.
Hear the truth.
Yeah.
Especially about something you made. Just be like, oh God, you're right.
Yeah. And then you have a whole nother perspective of it. Yeah.
Well, that's what it's for.
Yeah.
It's to,
for sure.
It's to see it another way for just, if not just for a moment. I think that's important when you make work. You have to at least step back and ask yourself, in any way, is this awful? And if so, why is it awful? And is it something you want?
Mm-hmm.
Because awful is subjective. So, you just have to kind of like be able to ask yourself difficult questions. It's hard.
For sure.
It's hard.
Yeah. If you constantly surround people that are just agreeing with you, then you can become delusional in your own delusions of what you think of yourself,
Yeah. And I know a lot of delusional people. Pro skateboarders are extremely delusional. It's insane because like they I mean, artists too, but
oh yeah,
like
they drink their own Kool-Aid.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
It's insane. That's why a lot of skaters like become like drug addicts and alcoholics. They live in this like hyper reality, this non-reality.
Yeah.
And it can be shocking to be pulled out of it,
Yeah.
That's why a lot of tragedies happen in skating.
Yeah.
And, same with like art, music, all creative fields where, you have this talent and you're making money off it and you're maybe famous or something. It can distort your reality and you can totally live in this like fake world. And then, and it can end at any moment. And, when you're pulled out of it and thrown onto the streets, like, you don't have the tools or the skills to like function. Mm-hmm. I've seen it a lot. I've seen it tons of times. Yeah.
You've probably seen it too when, I was listening to your podcast, the podcast you did with Cameron Adair, I believe his name is. And, you're talking about just like when skateboarders specifically get older that, some don't have backup plans because they're athletes, it's like, and once your sponsors leave you, then what are you going to do for money? Right. Things like that.
Yeah. It's fairly simple. I remember when I first started a lot, like Marc Johnson specifically was just like, hey, like it's all like really rad right now, but it could end at any moment. So just think about that. It's not exactly what he said. I'm paraphrasing, but that's the message he sent me. And, I've kind of done it. I kind of haven't. But in general, like that's something that, if you live a life like that, you should just take a little bit of time to prepare for it to come crashing down.
Yeah.
But again, that's kind of the mystique and the appeal of skateboarding, right? Like not really caring about what society sort of demands of you. Mm-hmm. It's sort of part of the lifestyle.
Same as an artist.
Sure, yeah. Like that's part of like the whole appeal of it is that you don't think about these rules, and that's why you're good at what you do. So it's kind of like a contradiction. It's like a paradox, like what makes you good at something can also like kind of like destroy you later. It's it's just common. That's creative.
I think in skateboarding specifically, that is a physical and mental and emotional metaphor. I mean, physically, you're throwing yourself down a set of stairs, or like, I mean, I know that you've like sustained quite a few injuries yourself in your career, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I'm like, I mean, yeah, I've had some bad ones. I've had like my body is forever changed.
Yeah. What do you think about that now?
I mean, it's not so bad that I couldn't like go skate right now, but it is interesting to think about what I might be like if I never skated. Another thing I've been thinking about lately is how many concussions I've had.
Oh, wow.
And it's a lot. And sometimes I wonder what it's done to me. You know, like sometimes I go through these like depressive states, and I've always like suffered from depression, and I go through these like I go through these like phases and episodes, and sometimes I wonder if it has anything to do with it. I actually asked my friend who is like she's a neurological doctor, and I asked her about it, and she said that's unlikely. But I still wonder, you know, how it's affected me, because I've hit my head a lot.
Yeah.
And,
well, I'm no neurologist, but I mean, I know that there are studies out there that I've done some research on about the use of CBD helping with CTE brain injuries. Man, I don't know. Maybe you should like look into that. You know, if I don't know the CBD stuff.
yeah, I mean, I basically just don't deal with it, but and I don't even know, you know, CTE shit. Like it probably isn't even that. It's just something I wonder about.
Yeah,
you know, in regards to my injuries. Like the head stuff has always like kind of made me wonder. But yeah, I'm just generally, you know, kind of worn out a little bit. Definitely more than like 10 years ago or 20 years ago.
Yeah.
But that's just the name of the game, really.
Yeah.
There's no way around that.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, you just dedicate so much to it. So that's just, you know, that's the price you pay, which isn't a lot for me.
Yeah. Do you think, I mean, going into like psychedelics a bit, but do you think the times that you've done psychedelics, whether it be like, I'm assuming from your tattoo that you've done acid and like psilocybin mushrooms, I mean, do you think that helps like change in the way that your perspective and the way that you see things, and does it help, if anything?
I mean, personally, for me, in my experience, yeah, it does help. And like I mean, I did a lot when I was a teenager, just like mushrooms, like specifically acid only a few times. But yeah, I mean, it was, especially at that age, like kind of reaching this, I don't know what to call it, but you know, you kind of wake up the next morning feeling a little bit reborn, a little bit, especially, you know, being so young and like you just sort of, it brings out this part of your mind that you weren't able to access, right? So that's just really cool as a kid, because you're searching for your identity, and it can be so staticky, and if you're with the right people and in the right frame of mind, it can really open you up, which is, you know, it's so helpful at that age, I think. Even the bad trips, you know, even the bad trips were good for me, because you could kind of like just have this shitty experience and then come out of it and kind of, it gives you a level of appreciation just for like drug use in general.
yeah, for sure. Yeah, I guess, you know, I'll ask one more question. But do you have any advice for like artists or creatives or anyone that wants to pursue it as like a thing, like as a career?
Well, I don't know if I'm qualified to give anyone advice about doing creative stuff as a career, but like to have patience and work all the time, and ask yourself a lot of questions, like we talked about before, and do tons of research, like figure out what you like, figure out, and it's hard to figure out what you want to do, man. Like, I struggle with it all the time. Like, I don't know who I am. I don't know what I want to make. I don't know what type of artist or photographer I am. I'm constantly like confused and frustrated. But I think what's important is to try your best to work through that and be a little bit kind to yourself. Not too much, of course, but I mean, I'm the type of person who really, really struggles with what I make. And I just hope that telling people to kind of like fucking relax a little bit I just hope they hear it, because that's something that I don't have. It's a struggle for me. Just also another thing I would say, I guess, is like, make work for yourself. I know that everyone always says that, like, don't worry about what other people think, but really, truly, make things for yourself and do what you want to do, because starting to kind of make work for any other reason, it's a slippery slope. You can really end up in like a very weird place if you aren't truthful with yourself about what you want.
I agree.
And I mean, I struggle with that too. You know, like sometimes I make the wrong choice about something I'm doing, and it's very frustrating. It's super, super frustrating.
No, I mean, I hear you, man. Like, something that I try to tell myself a lot is just to, I'm not trying to think of this in like that woo-woo, like sort of like consequential LA spiritual mindset necessarily, but just to really, truly forgive yourself, you know? We're all going to make mistakes. No one's perfect, right?
Yeah.
So it's constantly coming back and forgiving yourself, forgiving other people. You know.
Yeah, I would say like make a lot of mistakes. I think like our a part of our culture that kind of sucks is the like absolute addiction to immediacy. You know, like everything needs to be immediate and fat, and like to make good work sometimes takes a lot of time. Like, and sometimes things aren't mature enough to be shown, and if you show it, like you're doing something prematurely, and like for example, like with photography, like I'm working on something right now where the photos are around 10 to 15 years plus older, you know, just kind of like early work type stuff. And so I'm going through a lot of things, and there's stuff in there that I've discovered. I've rediscovered it that, you know, like 5 or 10 years ago, I couldn't see it. It was just invisible. But now, I'm looking at it and there's all this new life in there. And that's something I want, like a lot of photographers to understand, because in a world where you can take a photo and it's immediately shown to you on a digital screen and you can immediately erase it, you know, you might be making something disappear that will be really, really valuable to you in time. That's sort of a condition of, you know, like a condition of photo making now. It's kind of like with the Nazi gold stuff, with the book, like I archived everything. Every single month after, like when my phone would fill up, I would dump it onto a hard drive and I just archived every single thing. And a lot of the stuff that's in the book has never been seen before. And that's because it was something that I didn't understand had any type of value. But now it does, you know, like, and maybe in the future it won't, but like, I think that's a very important thing for people to understand, is to keep everything and let it grow into what it will become, because just dumping everything and just taking what you like at the moment, I don't know, that could really hurt you later as an artist.
No, I agree.
Yeah, so that's just something I would say about it. That's why like I've experimented with digital photography other than the phone, and I just find myself like, oh, I need room. I need to like delete this stuff, and then you just make hasty decisions. I think like, that's just something I would say about it. That's some advice I would give, is to keep everything, and also you need to let yourself mature, because like maybe at the moment you just don't know what the fuck is up. You know, you don't understand, but that's sort of like the gift of photography, though, right? Like you have all this stuff, all this material, and you can revisit it later, and you can, like, what I'm doing right now is I'm finding all these things that are just like, it really makes me feel so glad that I have it.
All these little diamonds in the rough.
Yeah, I mean, like some things are diamonds immediately, you know, but then there are times that there are other things that they need a lot of time. They need time for you to like mature, you know, for you to understand like why it's good.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a beautiful metaphor for a lot of things. Yeah, just allowing yourself space to gestate the idea or the ideas, and and
you know what, it's harder than ever to do that now, because you know, the culture that we live in, and like with the internet and Instagram in particular, is it makes you feel like if you are not constantly participating, that you're dying a little bit, you know, that, or, you know, that your work is done, or whatever you're doing is not relevant, because it's not constantly being shown to the world. And that's bad. I mean, or not bad, but I don't know.
It's a symptom of the technology.
Sure. And it's a symptom of our condition too, as people, where we need things immediately. Like we can't live in the present, you know, always looking forward to the point where we're not even living. So, but yeah, that's a whole other conversation. Instagram is, it's a wonderful tool. It's a great tool, but how people use that tool sometimes is detrimental, you know.
I agree.
It's just how we all have to adapt to the technology, in addition to like our condition, you know, like the way people are. We just have to adapt to those things, because really it's just like an amplification of how we are, really. It's not really changing us. It's just showing us who we are. And you're gonna have to adapt to that too, like that truth of like who we really are as people. The internet and Instagram, it's showing us who we are, and you have to reconcile that. You have to be like, okay, like this is who we are, and this is how I have to deal with it.
I agree.
So it's complicated. It's difficult. It's also an addiction. Like, you know, like I'm looking at it all the time, and I'm constantly like, throwing my phone down and being like, fuck. Like,
fuck you, phone.
Yeah.
No, I totally get it, man.
Also, and I look at it and I feel bad. I feel this like self-loathing, because I feel like I'm comparing myself to other people, and I'm not doing as much as them. I'm not, whatever the comparison is. You know, I'm never enough. And that's, that can lead to like,
that's a sickness in itself.
Sure. Yeah. That can lead to producing nothing. You know, like you can look at someone, ideally you want to look at someone who's doing a lot that you want to be like, and you're going to see it and be like, oh, I better like hurry up and do all my stuff. But it can also send you into kind of a spell of doing nothing, where you're just like, oh, you know, it's just not worth it. I'm not good enough. And so. Yeah.
You go into like an existential state of nihilism.
Yeah, you have that like mini crisis of, you know, like, who am I? Why am I here?
Yeah, that's a whole.
Why should I even bother? You know, so yeah, because it's so much. It's overwhelming, the amount that's on there. It it can make you feel really, really small and insignificant.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I have to learn to deal with the amount that I'm on there, and because it's also positive, you know,
Yeah,
like
for
I also discover new things and like am super inspired, and a lot of like my references come from there. So it's a great tool, but like all tools, you know, it's either a benefit or harm.
Yeah.
You know. So.
Yeah. Well, I mean, good and evil exists. There's no good without evil, right?
Yeah, and you know, you can even ask if there even is such a thing as good or evil. You know, like those are just conventions. You know, like what is like
we'll spend the next 2 hours just discussing that.
Yeah, I mean, like what's good to us may not be good to someone 1,000 miles away, or even what's good to us now is not what was good to us 50 years ago. You know what I mean? Like it's an ever evolving
paradox.
It's just like what we believe changes all the time.
Yeah.
And what's good or evil, it's a human convention, you know what I mean? Animals don't feel good or evil. They just do.
Yeah.
You know, they don't think about anything else except what they're doing.
Yeah. Yeah, we're the only beings, at least to our knowledge and our communication structure, that is aware of our existence.
Yeah,
or that questions our existence.
Yeah, well, we have consciousness, you know, it's like you know, it's a gift, but there's a price.
Mm-hmm.
There's a price to having there's a price to like enjoying this world as much as we do.
Yeah.
Like there are like crises that we must experience to like kind of experience the good stuff.
Yeah. I agree.
Stuff, you know what I mean? Like all the wonders and beauty that we can appreciate that like say an animal can't. Like there's like a huge price, you know, which is like unhappiness. It's just the price of consciousness, really.
Yeah. Well, thanks, man.
Yeah, no problem.
Seriously, thanks so much for doing this.
Yeah, no problem.
I appreciate it.
Oh, it was fun.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, man. Cool.
Yeah.
And thank you for the book.
You're welcome.
This is fucking awesome.
No problem.
Yeah, man. Cool. And there it is. Hope you liked the episode. Music for the podcast is by Rarebit, aka Justin Dosher Hopkins. Editing help by Matthew Apol.